It is not easy for me to stand here today and do what I am about to do. But today, or tonight, is not about me. A conscience vote for me is about finding a solution that actively seeks to support the interests of workers, business owners and the community. I have not arrived at my decision lightly, and my decision is not based on my personal view of what could be right or what could be wrong. I have not approached this by looking through a moral lens solely based on the title of this bill. Every day of my working life I have dedicated to supporting workers' rights. I have stood shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of volunteers over many years to protect the rights of workers in their workplace. It is never easy taking a stand, either for or against. So I do congratulate the Honourable Tammy Franks for bringing this bill into this chamber, and the Honourable Michelle Linsink and the former member for Ashford, Steph Key, for taking the steps to remove a stigma sex workers feel they are confronted with. And the intentions of this bill, which I do appreciate, is to seek to make all workplaces a safer place. Just as I thank other speakers for highlighting their positions on this bill, I have stood in this chamber many, many times to highlight my opposition to complete deregulation of trading hours. Regulation, in my view, provides a level of protection. Protection for business owners, the workers and the community. I see this bill in the same light. I'm not opposing this bill on its objective to protect the rights of workers. I'm not opposing this bill because it seeks to remove a record of criminal convictions, and I'm not opposing this bill based on my personal opinions. These are, in fact, some of the very reasons why I would want to support this bill. But there is a very big but. There is another side of the coin. Unlike any other conscience vote before us in the near future, this bill is unique. Unlike the abortion bill or the voluntary euthanasia bill, the Decriminalisation of Sex Work bill provides a unique level of complexities. Complexities I feel are not addressed in this bill. The Decriminalisation of Sex Work bill is drafted on the basis of deregulation, with a view the sex industry is no different to any other industry. As one supporter of this bill stated to me, this bill will remove a stigma and would enable a brothel to be regulated in the same way as a bakery. While there would be probably food handling elements that would indeed make a bakery more regulated, I will continue to use this supporter's analogy throughout my speech as I continue to explain the differences. So for me, the question is, and the question I put to this chamber, is a brothel the same as a bakery? Again, putting moral views aside, putting the rights of one's choice of workplace aside, is a bakery the same as a brothel? This bill, under Part 2, Item 4 of Section 68A, has a provision to protect children from being subjected to sexual services, therefore making it an offence under the age of 18 years of age if one chooses to work in the sex industry. And under Part 3, Section 1, the definition of a sex worker means a person who provides sexual services on a commercial basis. I want to read the last few words back to you: a service on a commercial basis. We have established you need to be over the age of 18, and a service is provided on a commercial basis. If we then compare these two factors, after removing all emotion, all opinion, all beliefs, you are left with a similar commercial business to a pub, a tattoo parlour, a tobacco retailer, or a licensed gambling premises. All of these commercial services require staff to be over the age of 18. But with one fundamental difference, one difference which removes a layer of protection. The sex industry, unlike all the current industries I have just listed, would have no regulations placed on the industry outside the acts this bill refers to, and there are many acts within this bill. It would be viewed like a bakery, not like a pub. Why is this an issue? Again, taking morals out, taking personal views out of this decision, that would be because a brothel is an adult-only service. It is a criminal offence, as highlighted in this bill, to provide commercial services, sexual services to a child. Therefore, just like every other adult commercial service in South Australia, this bill would be drafted to include regulations to ensure all are protected: the workers, the owners, and the biggest stakeholder in this, the community. Let me walk you through some of the regulations I understand are imposed on the industries I have just listed, and I do apologise, this is going to take a while, and perhaps that is my very point. If you own a pub, you are regulated through a licence. In order to hold a licence, an individual must be, as the term puts it, a fit and proper person. In determining whether a person is a fit and proper person, the Licensing Commissioner must have regard to the reputation, honesty, integrity and creditworthiness of a person and their associates, including family members. The Liquor Licensing Commissioners assess this fit and proper status. Liquor licences applications are also provided to SAPOL for a prior conviction check, and SAPOL are also given the opportunity to provide other information relevant to the application. Applications must also be advertised and made available for public inspection, and any person can object to the granting of a licence. Liquor licences can be refused at the discretion of the Liquor Licensing Commissioner if it would be in the public interest to do so. The physical premises which serve alcohol are also heavily regulated. When applying for a liquor licence, it is necessary to provide some or all of a range of documents, including a floor plan of the venue, copies of the lease agreement or a certificate or a title, a business structure information, any capacity reports which determine how many people can occupy the building at one time. These documents are used to satisfy the Liquor Licensing Commissioners that the premises for which the licence is sought are of sufficient standard, and that the operations of a licence on the premises would be unlikely to result in undue offence, annoyance, disturbance or inconvenience to people who reside or work or worship in the vicinity, or to sway the safety of children attending kindergarten, primary school or secondary school in the vicinity. After a liquor licence is granted, a licensee must also comply with the General Code of Practice, which mandates practices in relation to undertaking underage drinking, drink spiking and the development of a risk assessment and management plans. The licence conditions vary depending on the nature of the premises, but, for example, at an entertainment venue, licensed liquor can only be served while live entertainment is taking place, unless a customer is seated at a table and has ordered a meal. There is also regulations around internal signage, and the liquor licence must be prominently displayed at the premises at all times. It is also a criminal offence for a person to enter a licensed premises if they are wearing or carrying any items associated with declared criminal organisations. Police and other authorised officers have the power to enter a licensed premises at any reasonable time and inspect the accounts and records. Police may also enter and search a premise which they believe, on reasonable grounds, is being used for the sale of liquor without a licence, and can clear or close a licensed premises if a police officer believes on reasonable grounds that it would be unsafe for members of the public to enter or remain. The Liquor Licensing Commissioners also has the power to vary. suspend or impose conditions on a licence in the interest of the public order and safety. A gambling venue, another adult venue. Again, as I understand, different forms of gambling are also licensed in South Australia. Before applying for a gambling machine licence, an individual must already hold a liquor licence and, in addition, is required to obtain a social effects certificate. Licensees also have to operate in accordance with a mandatory code of conduct, which covers advertisements, responsible gambling operations and staff welfare. Each gaming machine licence is also subject to a number of conditions which regulate machine operations. Gaming premises are also heavily regulated, including restrictions on the location of ATMs, the use of multilingual signage advising of problem gambling assistance, and the prominent display of the time of day throughout the venue. Tattoo regulations, another adult venue. Tattoo services, as I understand, are not licensed in South Australia, but the industry is regulated. Before commencing business, an individual is required to inform the local council. Businesses providing tattooing services must also inform the state government through Consumer and Business Services of the names and the addresses of all directors, details of all employees, details of the leasee agreements or certificates of title, and details of the place where tattooing is performed. Certain individuals can be disqualified from providing tattoo services if they also, or a close associate of a family member, are a member of a prescribed organisation. Local council officials are empowered to inspect tattoo parlours under the South Australian Public Health Act. These inspections ensure the hygiene of the premises. All of these are adult commercial services and they are highly regulated. I am not for 1 second suggesting these are the regulations required. I am purely highlighting that a level of protection is required and that can only be achieved through a level of regulation. I would like to work through some of these opposing regulations between a gambling venue and a brothel under this bill, particularly the age of a person working on the premises of a commercial service. This question was raised in the last committee stage by, I believe, the Honourable Dennis Hood, along the lines of, can a person working on the front desk in a brothel be under the age of 18? I will expand on this because I believe it is important. If there is a person working in accounting, social media, any element other than providing a commercial sexual service, I have been advised there is no requirement for them to be over the age of 18. Again, as a brothel is classed the same as a bakery. A 14-year-old could legally be employed to staff the front reception desk of a brothel. This bill removes criminal records of previous sex work offences. Therefore, the argument that licensing would be an issue due to previous criminal convictions would be irrelevant, unless the criminal offence was outside the provisions of being a sex worker. Many may also argue brothels are already in our community, and yes, they are. But the argument that they are already there and the community are not aware, and how would this bill change that? We all know in this chamber, well, I hope so, that as a state politician, we cannot place an advertisement in our community greater than 1 metre by 1 metre. If this bill is successful, a person working in the sex industry will be able to place a banner on their shop front larger than a state politician would be able to. Why? Because there are no additional regulations on size, there are no additional regulations on content, and there are no additional regulations on placement of the advertisement within the community, on a shop front or on a bus shelter under this bill. So the argument that brothels are already in our community and they are not visible, I believe, is a weak argument. I would like to expand on regulations regarding content of the advertisement not being regulated in this bill. Again, in this bill, the title of a person working in this industry is defined as a sex worker. Again, taking opinion out, would there not be an argument a billboard 3 metres by 3 metres could be displayed outside a school with the words, "See your sex worker here"? This would be no different to saying, "See your baker here." It is their job title. There are many elements of this bill I agree with, but there are too many underlying issues I cannot support. This bill was drafted by sex workers with the intent to protect their rights in the workplace. But it has limited regard and no regulation for the other side of the coin. The same community considerations placed on other adult services are not imposed on the sex industry. There is no additional regulation on the location of street walkers. There is no additional regulation on the element of this. There is no additional regulation on any element of this bill that is not imposed on a commercial bakery. Simply saying this bill is an improvement on the current situation, but in the same breath saying it is not the best bill, simply saying enough, close enough is good enough, is not respecting what this bill does not address, and that is the physical footprint this adult commercial service could have in the community. We regulate many commercial industries more than what this bill will regulate the sex industry, from hairdressers to pet shops to car yards. All of these industries have additional regulations imposed on them above the regulations imposed on the sex industry under this bill. It is my understanding if I was to move to Adelaide with a criminal record and set up a hotel, a car yard, a tattoo parlour, a hydroponic shop, I would not be able to open any of these businesses. I would not be able to work in any of these industries. If I was to move to Adelaide with a criminal record and set up a brothel, I would be able to work in a brothel and I would be able to own a brothel under this bill. This bill has a focus on choice to be a sex worker, but it does not provide any additional regulation to support those who do not choose to be a sex worker. If this bill passes, our lower house colleagues will be confronted with an additional challenge of the complexity that this is a bill that does not address its physical footprint within its communities and applies regulation similar to other adult-focused industries, from advertising to location. Once you deregulate to the extent of this bill, it is difficult, as New South Wales is discovering, to turn back the clock. This bill goes much further than New South Wales, and despite the New South Wales 2015 review highlighting a need to address licensing to help regulate the industry, the review was voted down in Parliament. New Zealand has a licensing model, as does Victoria. After highlighting all of these issues, this bill is built on the foundation of complete decriminalisation. By regulating one component of this bill, it is difficult not to have rippling implications through the remainder of the bill. The definition of a brothel and the definition of a residential sex worker would need to be addressed to avoid all sex workers requiring a licence, as too would any other elements of this bill. I will not stand in the way of amendments being made to this bill. Our job as legislators is to ensure we do provide support to all South Australians, and I hope the consideration of all South Australians will be duly given in the committee stage. While I am open to legislative reform in this area, I am unable to support the bill in its current form. I will be seeking to make amendments that protect sex workers and the community. But the integrity of this bill that implies this should be an industry treated like a bakery with no additional regulations imposed will make it difficult to amend. I agree this isn't the best bill. I agree we need legislative reform, and I agree all workers have the right to feel safe in their workplace. But I do not agree that regulation should not apply to ensure a level of protection is given to those who choose and those who do not choose to be part of the sex industry, be that as a sex worker or in the general community. I understand this bill has been drafted to remove a stigma that suggests that the sex industry is just like any other industry. I will support this bill through to the committee, but I do not support it in its current form. The question I leave you with after this discussion is a brothel different to a bakery?
The Honourable Mr Stevens.
Thanks, Mr.